fiasco that happened in the White House last Friday, U.S. President Donald Trump has decided to pause all military aid to Ukraine. The United States is the largest provider of military aid to Ukraine. In fact, since the Russia-Ukraine war began 3 years ago, the U.S. has given more than $65 billion to the Ukrainian army. This is out of an appropriation of over $180 billion that the U.S. Congress has passed. Now, the $65 billion comes to a screeching halt. The question is, how long can Ukraine continue to fight without American help? Of course, we saw what happened over the weekend, the emergency summit that was convened by British Prime Minister Keir Starmer in London, where European countries have stepped up their defense spending. They've also stepped up the military aid that they're giving Ukraine. European leaders are trying to fill that void which America leaves behind. But the moot point is, even the European leaders know that without America and without an American backstop to the minerals deal, an American backstop to any kind of temporary ceasefire that may be on the anvil, then Ukraine and its war effort to defend itself from Russian aggression is pretty much dead on arrival. So let's break up the amount of aid that's been given by the United States as well as by the European Union. The US, of course, has been the biggest donor of military hardware and military aid to Ukraine during these last 3 years of the war. With that halt, with that pause in military aid, Ukraine has now been deprived of supplies worth $1 billion, which were in the pipeline. Now, what are the major kinds of artillery or combat weapons that America has given to Ukraine? Artillery rounds, 155 millimeter howitzers. These are guns and shells which have been given, which are required for ground combat. There are the HIMARS, extremely useful rockets, rocket launchers, which are meant for long to medium range strikes. There are also the anti-tank missiles, which were useful in the first half of this war, the Javelin anti-tank missiles. Also the Stinger missiles, both the Javelins and the Stingers were essentially used by the Ukrainian army to try and halt the Russian tank and the Russian infantry combat movement in its tracks. Also, there are Stryker armored vehicles which have been provided by the United States to Ukraine. That comes to a halt as well as the NASAMS air defense systems. Now, remember, London has stepped in and said that they are providing $2 billion to Ukraine to procure similar air defense systems, about 5,000 of them. The United States has also provided Ukraine with advanced tanks as well as sophisticated drones. Much of this war is being fought by unmanned aerial vehicles, drones that are being provided by both the European partners as well as the United States. The US part, at least, comes to a screeching halt with the decision taken by Mr. Trump overnight. Let's listen in to what he had to say as to why he felt the need to put an end to all American military aid to Ukraine.
Well, I just think you should be more appreciative because this country has stuck with them through thick and thin. We've given them much more than Europe, and Europe should have given more than us. If we gave $1, they should have given. Well, we gave $350 billion. They probably gave $100.
So the impact of this military pause by the United States, it may not be immediately felt, but certainly it's going to be felt in the next 3 months or so. Certainly by the summer, Ukraine is going to feel a shortage of ammunition. Now, what happens when you have a shortage of ammunition, particularly when you're taking on a bigger and more well-equipped foe, which is the Russian army, is that you start rationing the ammunition. So Ukraine's defense fortifications could therefore weaken. So Putin must be looking at this and saying that if he plays for time, because time certainly seems to be on his side, if he plays for time, then he could further attack Ukraine and further reinforce Russia's positions, maybe grab more Ukrainian territory. Ukraine's counter-attacking abilities will also suffer. Remember, last August, they made this daring attempt in Kursk, which was Russian territory, and now Ukraine is hoping that they can use that as some kind of a quid pro quo for territorial adjustments if it came down to peace negotiations. The Russian air attacks might also intensify. Like I said, Putin will be very closely watching the halt in American aid, military aid, and will want to step up further Russian attacks, both by ground as well as through naval attacks and air attacks. Russia could also push for more territorial gains in the next 2 to 3 months as Putin tries to put this war on a fast track before eventually both sides get to the negotiating table and try to freeze the borders as they currently stand. So, US President Donald Trump, he recently had said that Washington had spent over $300 billion on the Ukraine war effort. He said that even last night as he paused the military funding to Ukraine. It's an assertion which sharply contrasts with the figures that have been provided by Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. He's also accused Europe of not pulling its weight in aid. Let's try and put those claims by Donald Trump through a fact check. The Kiel Institute for World Economy, one of the most respected think tanks in the world, a German research group which has been tracking all the Ukrainian aid that that country has received in the last 3 years, it estimates that America has supplied approximately $20 billion in total aid, while European countries have collectively contributed $138 billion. Sorry, that's $120 billion of total US aid and $138 billion collectively by all the 20-plus European countries. The United States leads in military support. It has contributed more than $67 billion to the Ukrainian army in terms of just military aid that has been made available in the last 3 years of this war, whereas European countries put together have given slightly less at $66 billion of military aid. But Europe, on the other hand, has outpaced the United States when it comes to financial as well as humanitarian aid, contributing about $22 billion, whereas the US has so far given only $3.5 billion in terms of humanitarian aid to Ukraine since this war began. CNN's Anderson Cooper, in fact, sat down with Fareed Zakaria, the host of GPS and one of the foremost foreign policy thinkers in the world, to try and get an assessment of what impact this is going to have on the battlefield, because this is ultimately a battle of attrition. And if the biggest donor, which is the United States of America, is pulling the plug from under Ukraine's feet, then how may that translate on the battlefield? This is Fareed Zakaria's take.
So, Fareed, I mean, Caitlin Collins made it crystal clear this would not be happening if President Zelensky had not stood up for himself, or if he had apologized more or been thankful more. What's your reaction to this pause?
It is a historic mistake, and it is sad that the United States would change its policy on the most important geopolitical event going on right now, the greatest land war in Europe since World War II, because President Trump felt he wasn't treated nicely. I mean, this feels to me like taking personal diplomacy to an absurd level. Look, I don't think Zelensky handled it perfectly either. I think that he took Vice President Vance's bait. He shouldn't have. He got too emotional. He should have just let all that stuff be discussed privately. But you're talking about hundreds of thousands of Ukrainian soldiers on the battlefield who are now going to experience death and destruction because President Trump felt he didn't get a nice thank you. I mean, it just seems grotesque.
If you were Vladimir Putin tonight, this, I assume, is the best news possible.
Well, the Russians have been celebrating now for a week or two because they have seen a complete reversal of American policy, not just a complete reversal of American strategy, but even of American kind of morality, where we are now openly siding with Russia. We're talking about the ways in which Ukraine is the problem. President Trump has said that Ukraine started the war, that Zelensky is a dictator. Alex Gabuyev told Biana Govriga on my show, this is like Easter, Hanukkah, Christmas, and Putin's birthday all taking place in one day.